Okay, forecasting process for paid search training. The overview, so your goal here is always to increase spend while hitting your targets. So we don't want to be too conservative because you still want to push spend. So when you're doing a forecast, try to go for as much spend as you can, and then something that you're still going to be able to hit what you forecast. Don't forget about seasonality. That plays in big when you're doing forecasting. You also want to leverage similar client accounts. So for an example, um, a small e-commerce brand, is going to perform pretty similarly. And then obviously Netgear is going to perform pretty similarly, except when you get into like SMB and that sort of thing. But in general, like Orbi's going to perform pretty similar to Nighthawk for ITP clicks, not necessarily for sales, but for ITP clicks. So you want to leverage similar accounts and those learnings and that performance. And then when we're doing forecasting, my recommendation for the highest level of accuracy is you start with the impressions and you extrapolate. And we'll talk about pitfalls as well, but also you want to make sure that you are doing it on a campaign level or even a keyword level, depending on what you're forecasting, and you're not using the total. But I'll show you what I mean. All right, so step one, you want to increase what's already working. So you look at the share of voice or the search impression share for the best performing campaigns. And then depending on the loss impression share, whether it's due to rank or budget, that's where you have to increase, right? So if budget, you want to use Google's limited by budget estimation. So that's the fastest way. You can also manually calculate it, which I'm going to show you. And then if it's by rank, you want to increase your average CPC forecast at least 10%, because to overcome search impression share loss due to ad rank, you have to increase your cost, you have to increase your bids, and then also remember that it's really hard to get to 100% share of voice if you have issues with low ad rank. So you want to keep that in mind. Don't predict you can hit 100% because you probably can't if you're losing impression share due to ad rank. I would aim for like 90% or something like that. And then you want to look at what's not working so well. So we have like an average like ROI or an average cost per conversion, right? And like brand will do really well, generic will do really bad, and then you have an average. So you want to look at brand first, that's what's doing really well, and then you want to look at generic second, and then which is not working really well. And also if you're adding new stuff, then like say you want to add in a DSA campaign or something like that, then you want to work with a ROAS of 100%. Cost per conversion, you should probably borrow from generic and maybe increase it a bit if you're not dealing with ROAS. And then you want to continue bumping up that spend at that cost per conversion or 100% ROAS until you start bringing down your cumulative, your total average of your KPI. So hopefully that makes sense. But basically you want to push like generic, or you want to push like DSA until you're bringing everything below your KPI. And you just want to be really conservative in your cost per conversion and your ROAS and not overestimate what it's going to actually do for you. Next, you want to look at seasonality. So you want to look at the performance for the same month last year or the same quarter last year, how it compared to the previous quarter, how it compared to the previous year. So you want to look at year-over-year trends from last month, and then you want to look at the month-over-month trends in previous years. So for example, if conversion rate went up, this month is March, so if it went up, and you're doing forecast for April, if conversion rate went up in April compared to March, you want to look and see, okay, was that true 2 years ago, and was that true 3 years ago? And hopefully you have enough data to see that. But if you don't have enough data, you don't know, you can't really do anything. But you want to look if you have the data. And then you can do the same thing with CTR, et cetera. And then like say if year over year you have increased CPC trends, then you can expect to have increased CPCs year over year for what you're forecasting. Now, if you're looking at new targets, so new keywords you're forecasting or a brand new client or something like that, a brand new build, you have no data to go off of, you want to use Keyword Planner and use those estimates. And then you want to adjust those estimates. We don't want to take Google at its word because it's always wrong. And typically you see that with CTR. So you'll see Google estimate like a 1 or 2% CTR. And then if you look at your own accounts, you guys are averaging like 4 or higher. It depends. But so that makes a huge difference, right? So a 1% click-through rate compared to a 4%, that's a 4x increase in clicks. So adjust your CTR based on what you typically get. And you can also do that with conversion rates as well. And then, like we talked about, you want to leverage your other clients, your other accounts, and then use those to forecast for brand new builds and brand new targeting. And then here's your calculations. So we're going to go through an example, but to calculate for 100% impression share, this would be mostly for budget. So you take your impressions and you divide it by the search impression share. That's going to get you. So if you have 80% impression share and you want to get to 100, you divide your impressions by that 80%, and then it'll tell you what it would have been if you are at 100% impression share. And then if you're working with like lost impression share due to budget, say you had lost 20% of impression share due to budget, you would take your impressions divided by 1 minus 20%, which is 0.8, and then that would give you your 100% impression share. And again, you don't want to take your average of your total. You want to look at each line one by one. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. And as far as process goes, I want you to send all of your your forecasts to me. I'm going to be double checking all your forecasts. That might eventually move to Matthew, but for now, send them to me. So when you submit them in Monday, assign it to me, and then I'll assign it to the strategist once it's approved. I might override that for certain accounts, but in general, that's going to be the process. So I'll be checking those. And then I have video trainings. If you haven't watched these, please watch them. I go by step for a new account and an existing account, and we're going to do that right now as well. But here are the links if you want to go look at that. So I did that really quickly. Does anyone have any questions?
None so far.
All right. All right. All right. So this is an account that has some search loss impression share due to budget, and then also rank. So if I was going to forecast for next month, now I'm going to try to push my budgets up, and I'm not going to take my totals because so depending on the client, this could be way off. I need to do it line by line on a individual campaign level. The reason why is because, so here brand is obviously really skewed. And so if I increase my impression share for DSA at the same performance as brand, then it's not going to work out. I'm going to be overly, what's the word? It's going to look better than it's really going to be, right? Because here I'm like heavily brand, and I'm not increasing it at that same rate as if I was averaging everything together. Hopefully that makes sense. But so you want to go line by line. And this is what I do. I start with my impressions at 100% share of voice. And then I start with budget. So, and then I calculate my clicks, and then I calculate my costs, and then I calculate my conversions, and then my revenue, and then my ROI. Okay, so remember our calculations? So we're going to take our impressions, and we're going to divide it by 1 minus, oh, we don't have it for budget. Hold on one second. Let me do that down here for our budget stuff. So equals impressions divided by 1 minus my search impression share loss due to budget. Oops, what did I do wrong? I forgot my sorry guys, I forgot my parentheses. Okay, so this is what I would have had if I had 100%. These are how many impressions I would have had if I was at 100% impression share due to budget. So now I'm going to calculate what I actually would have had in clicks, costs, conversions, and revenue at 100% impressions. And I'm going to use this data because it should not change if I increase my budget. Not very much. So now to calculate my clicks, I'm going to take my impressions and I'm going to multiply it by my click-through rate. And then to get my costs, I'm going to take my new clicks at 100% impression share and I'm going to multiply it by the cost per click. And again, I expect that none of these will change because all I'm doing is adding more budget to the current performers. So for conversion rate, I'm going to take my clicks and I'm going to multiply it by what my conversion rate was, which should be right here. And then to calculate revenue, I'm going to take my conversions and I'm going to multiply it by my conversion value. What would that be? Hold on. Conversion value or value per conversion. Here we go. So that's my revenue, and then my ROAS equals revenue divided by spend. Okay, so if I was to have 100% impression share on my DSA campaign, I would have spent $16.88 instead of $14.92, and my conversions would have been 18 instead of 16, and my revenue would have been 26699 versus 2354. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to do that for all of my impression share loss due to budget, and I don't have that many. And I can just copy and paste that down. And then for search impression share loss due to rank, it's very similar, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my impressions divided by 1 minus, there's probably an easier way to do this, but just bear with me, this is my process. And then you got to take that, you got to take 90% of that. So I think what I can do is this. Instead of adding a new column, which is what I typically do, and I'm going to multiply it by 0.9. Okay, so I'm calculating at 100% impression share, just like I would for the budget, but instead of taking 100%, I'm going to take 90, which doesn't make sense if this is higher than 90. So hold on one second. So yeah, so that actually doesn't work for for campaigns that have really low search impression share loss due to rank. So it has to be higher than 10%. So this, I'm going to paste it here, here, and here. And I'm going to ignore, oops, I'm going to ignore that top one. Okay, so if you're almost at 0, then just forget about it. Don't worry about those. You can do it for budget though. So now I'm at 90% search impression share because I'm lost due to rank, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to calculate it here, but I have to add my 10% to my cost. So this, I'm just kind of doing a shortcut here. So here, I need to take this number and I'm going to add 10%. So how I do that is I multiply it by 1.1. Is everybody following me here? Any questions?
Yep.
Are you guys going to be able to do this on our test?
Maybe.
I feel like I'm not explaining it super well.
Nah. What's the 1.1 again?
Okay, so when you are looking at search impression share loss due to ad rank, so in order to increase your ad rank to get this down, you have to raise your bids. So that's going to raise your cost. So I'm estimating at least 10% increase in cost. So I'm taking what the CPC was and I'm multiplying it by 1.1, 110%. So I'm increasing it by 10%. So in my forecast now, I am increasing my average CPCs. And then I have to multiply this by 0.09, which is 90%, because it's really hard to get this to 0.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, and then I just extrapolate it out. So where was I? So here, I got my average CPCs. May, Ralph, are you guys following that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then this is the most accurate way to do this. And what's funny is with forecasting, it's like you could try to get as accurate as you want and it'll never be accurate. That's just how it works. Okay, so now I have that done for my search impression share loss due to rank. And then you might have campaigns that have both. And so in that situation, what you have to do is do it twice. So, wait, hold on one second. I just want to make sure. I typically only focus on search impression share loss due to budget if you're missing both, but because it's a bit complicated if you're going to do both. Because what you would have to do then is, wait, why isn't this pasting? What you would have to do is you would have to add it and then subtract this. So it just gets a lot more messy, and I'm going to not do that for the sake of this training, and also because I don't typically do that for a forecast. I'll work on this first, and then like the next month, if I can get this to 0, then I'll work on search impression share loss due to rank. So, so just skip that. Pretend I didn't say that. Okay, so now you have your new cost and revenue for these campaigns. So then what you get to do is you get to copy these guys. So I take my conversion values. These stay the same, right? And I get new totals when I do this. And I also need my cost. So if I go over to cost, this is like I should create a spreadsheet that does this all like with a macro or something. I just haven't spent the time to do that. But maybe you guys could do that because you're smarter than me. All right, so here's my new cost, my new revenue, my new ROI. And then what you can do is you can compare it to what you had. So we increased spend by, or excuse me, this is revenue. So I'm going to do equals new revenue divided by, sorry, wait a second. Wait, sorry, revenue divided by, it's late. I don't know. I'm tired. Sorry, guys. Okay, so, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking. So you have revenue minus, or you have new versus old divided by old, right? Golly. I do that so often. I can't believe I blinked on that. Okay, so now we're increasing revenue by 3.5%, which isn't very much. And then we're going to look at cost. So we have equals new cost minus old cost divided by old cost. All right, so we're increasing cost by 12% to get an extra 3.6% in revenue. Does that make sense? Following me?
Yep.
Okay, so that's not very efficient, right? But that's kind of where we're at because you're increasing revenue for low performing stuff because everything that is performing well is pretty much at like 100% impression share. So eventually you're going to get to this kind of point, and then the client can either choose to do this or not do this. That's pretty much what you're looking at. So this is a very efficient campaign. So if you see something like that, I mean, that's just kind of where you're at. So you get to a point of diminishing returns. So that's where this is at. So your forecast then would be, you would add up, you would basically fill in the gaps. If you need impressions and everything, you fill in the gaps here.